The news spread across the galaxy like fire through dry grass. Queen Yuna of the Valoran Empire had announced her intention to marry. Every planet, every space station, every ship floating in the dark void of space buzzed with the same conversation. The most beautiful and powerful woman in the known universe was looking for a husband. Queen Yuna ruled 17 star systems. Her empire controlled trade routes that connected distant corners of the galaxy. Her ancestors had built machines and weapons that other species could not understand, even after thousands of years of study. To marry her meant gaining access to all of this. It meant power beyond imagination. But it was not just her kingdom that made the galaxy tremble with desire. Queen Yuna herself was extraordinary. Her skin glowed with a soft silver light that changed with her emotions. Her eyes held the color of dying stars, deep purple with flecks of gold. When she spoke, her voice carried a music that made even the coldest hearts feel warm. Poets from 100 worlds had written about her beauty. Artists had spent lifetimes trying to capture her image. None had succeeded. She was young by her species standards, only 300 years old, but she had already proven herself a wise and strong ruler. Under her leadership, the Valoran Empire had grown peaceful and prosperous. Her people loved her. Her enemies feared her. And now every ambitious prince and lord in the galaxy wanted to claim her as their own. The first suitors began arriving within days of the announcement. Their ships filled the space around the Valoran home world until the sky itself seemed crowded with metal and light. Prince Dowan came from the crystalline hierarchy. His people were beings of living crystal, beautiful and terrible. They could reshape their bodies at will, becoming weapons or works of art depending on their mood. Dowan himself stood 9 feet tall, his form carved from what appeared to be perfect diamond. Light passed through him and scattered into rainbows. He brought gifts of gemstones that sang songs when touched, crystals that could store memories for eternity, and a crown made from the heart of a collapsed star. High Commander Taiho arrived next with the Iron Collective. His people had long ago abandoned flesh for metal. They existed as consciousness inside mechanical bodies, connected to each other through an endless network of shared thought. Taiho's body was built for war, covered in weapons and armor that had never known defeat. He offered Queen Yuna something no one else could, the protection of 10,000 warships and an army that did not know fear, pain, or mercy. Lord Hyun of the Mindweaver Consortium came quietly, without the grand displays of the others. His people looked almost human, but their minds were anything but ordinary. They could read thoughts, move objects without touching them, and see possible futures like branches on a tree. Yun was considered the most powerful psychic born in 10 generations. He promised Queen Yuna the secrets of dimensional travel, the ability to step between worlds as easily as walking through a door. More suitors came. A prince from the ocean kingdoms arrived in a ship filled with water, his serpentine body coiling through the depths. A warrior queen from the burning worlds came wreathed in flames that never went out. An ancient being from the edges of known space appeared as a cloud of living light, claiming to be older than most stars. Each one brought wealth. Each one brought power. Each one looked at Queen Yuna and saw everything they could gain from marrying her. Queen Yuna received them all in her great hall, sitting on a throne carved from a single piece of moonstone. She smiled politely at their gifts. She nodded at their promises. She thanked them for their kind words about her beauty. But those who watched closely noticed that her eyes remained distant, as if she was looking for something she could not find among all these powerful beings. Far away from the glittering palace and the gathering of princes, a small cargo ship drifted through empty space. The ship was old and battered, held together more by determination than by engineering. Its name, painted on the side in fading letters, was the Quiet Dawn. Inside the ship, a man named Kim Ji-hoon sat in the pilot seat and watched the stars pass by. He was 32 years old, average height, with tired eyes and rough hands that showed years of hard work. There was nothing special about him. He was not handsome like the princes. He was not powerful like the commanders. He was just a man who flew cargo from one place to another, trying to make enough money to keep his ship running and food in his stomach. Ji-hoon had been a cargo captain for 15 years. He had seen wonders that most humans could only dream of. He had visited planets made entirely of ice and worlds where the rain fell upward. He had traded with species that communicated through color and negotiated with beings that existed in multiple dimensions at once. But through all of it, he remained what he had always been, a simple man doing simple work. Today, his job was to deliver medical supplies to a remote Valoran outpost. It was routine work, the kind of job he had done 1,000 times before. The pay was modest, barely enough to cover fuel costs, but Ji-hoon did not complain. Medical supplies meant sick people waiting for help. That made the job important, even if it did not make him rich. He checked his navigation computer and adjusted his course. The Valoran outpost was still 2 days away. He had enough food, enough water, and enough fuel to make it there and back. Everything was going according to plan. Ji-hoon had no idea that the galaxy was changing around him. He did not know about Queen Yuna's announcement or the gathering of princes. He did not know that events were moving towards something that would change his life forever. He was just a cargo captain, flying through the stars, thinking about his next delivery, and wondering if the outpost would have decent coffee. In the great palace of the Valoran Empire, Queen Yuna stood alone on her balcony and looked up at the night sky. Somewhere out there, among the countless stars, was the answer to a question she had never spoken aloud. She was not looking for power. She had enough power. She was not looking for beauty. She saw beauty everywhere she looked. She was not looking for wealth or protection or ancient secrets. She was looking for something far more rare. She was looking for someone who would see her, not her crown, not her kingdom, not her usefulness to their ambitions. Just her. The stars offered no answer, but they never did. Answers, she had learned, came from unexpected places, in unexpected forms, at unexpected times. She returned to her chambers, not knowing that a battered cargo ship called the Quiet Dawn was slowly making its way toward her world, carrying a man who had no idea he was about to become the most important person in the galaxy. The Great Hall of the Valoran Palace was the largest enclosed space in the known galaxy. Its ceiling rose so high that clouds sometimes formed inside on humid days. Its walls were made of a material that shifted between transparent and solid, allowing light to pour in from the 3 suns that orbited the Valoran homeworld. On this day, the hall was filled with beings from every corner of the universe, all gathered for one purpose. Queen Yuna sat on her throne and watched the suitors compete for her attention. The competition had become fierce as more princes arrived. Each one tried to outdo the others with displays of wealth and power that grew more elaborate by the hour. Prince Dowan of the crystalline hierarchy stood in the center of the hall and demonstrated his people's mastery over matter. He waved his hand, and the air itself turned to crystal, forming sculptures of impossible beauty that floated and spun in the light. The sculptures showed scenes from Valoran history, each one more detailed than the last. When he finished, he bowed to the queen and smiled with a mouthful of diamond teeth. High Commander Taiho was not impressed. He activated a holographic display that filled half the hall with images of his fleet. Thousands of warships appeared, each one bristling with weapons capable of destroying planets. He spoke of battles won, enemies crushed, and territories conquered. His voice was cold and mechanical, but his message was clear. Marry him, and no force in the galaxy would dare threaten the Valoran Empire. Lord Hyun simply sat in his chair and smiled. He did not need to show off. Everyone in the hall knew what he was capable of. To prove his point, he reached out with his mind and made every being in the room experience a moment of perfect peace. For one heartbeat, all their fears and worries disappeared. Then the feeling was gone, leaving them wanting more. That, Hyun seemed to say, was just a taste of what life with him would be like. The other suitors took their turns. The prince from the ocean kingdoms created a sphere of water that floated in the air, filled with creatures so beautiful they made observers weep. The warrior queen from the burning world set herself on fire and danced without being harmed, her flames forming shapes that told stories of ancient battles. The being of light simply expanded until it filled the entire hall, making everyone feel small and insignificant. Through it all, Queen Yuna watched with the same distant expression. She applauded politely. She said kind words. She showed no preference for any suitor over another. The princes grew frustrated. They had shown her everything they had to offer, but she remained unmoved. Far from the palace in a completely different part of the Valoran system, Kim Ji-hoon was having problems of his own. The Quiet Dawn's main engine had failed. Warning lights covered every panel in the cockpit. Strange sounds came from somewhere deep in the ship's belly. Ji-hoon had managed to guide his dying vessel to one of the Queen's agricultural moons, but he had barely made it. The ship now sat in a field of purple grain, smoke rising from its damaged engine. Ji-hoon climbed out and looked at the damage. It was bad. The engine's core had cracked, leaking power cells that would take weeks to replace. He was stranded on a moon he had never visited, with no way to contact anyone for help. His communication array had died along with his engine. He sat down on a rock and took a deep breath. This was not the first time something like this had happened. When you flew an old ship through dangerous space, breakdowns were part of life. He would find a solution. He always did. A village sat in the valley below. Ji-hoon could see simple houses made from local stone, fields of crops stretching toward the horizon, and people moving about their daily lives. Perhaps they had a communication device he could use. Perhaps they knew a mechanic who could help. At the very least, they might have food and water to share. He walked toward the village, enjoying the feeling of solid ground beneath his feet after weeks in space. The moon was beautiful in a quiet way. The air smelled of growing things. The sky was a soft orange color that reminded him of sunsets on Earth. As he approached the village, he noticed something wrong. People were running, screaming. A group of armed men on vehicles were circling the village center, firing weapons into the air. Pirates. Ji-hoon recognized their type immediately. They preyed on remote settlements, stealing supplies, and terrorizing innocent people who had no way to defend themselves. Ji-hoon had no weapons. He had no special powers. He was just a cargo captain with a broken ship and empty pockets. The smart thing to do was hide and wait for the pirates to leave. Getting involved would only get him killed. But the screaming continued. He saw a child running from one of the pirates, crying in terror. He saw an old man knocked to the ground. He saw people who reminded him of his own family back on Earth. Simple farmers who just wanted to live their lives in peace. Ji-hoon did not make a conscious decision. His body simply started moving before his mind could stop it. He ran back to his ship. The engine was dead, but other systems still worked. He activated the emergency beacon, the one designed to signal other ships in distress. Then he modified it, changing its frequency to match a Valoran military channel. He recorded a message claiming to be a patrol ship under attack, requesting immediate backup. Finally, he set the beacon to broadcast on a loop and pointed it towards space. Then he waited. The pirates had good equipment. Within minutes, their leader received the signal and heard the fake distress call. A Valoran patrol ship under attack meant military reinforcements were coming. The pirates knew better than to fight the Valoran military. They gathered their vehicles and fled into the wilderness, leaving the village behind. Ji-hoon watched them go, then walked down to the village to see if anyone was hurt. The villagers gathered around him, confused and grateful. They asked who he was, how he had driven the pirates away. He told them the truth. He was just a cargo captain with a broken ship. He had used his emergency beacon to fake a distress call. It was a simple trick, nothing special. A woman stood at the edge of the crowd, watching him with curious eyes. She wore simple clothes like the other villagers, her dark hair tied back from her face. There was something about the way she held herself that seemed different from the others, but Ji-hoon could not identify what it was. She walked up to him and smiled. Her smile was warm and genuine, nothing like the polite expressions Ji-hoon received from customers and port officials. "Thank you," she said. "You saved us." Ji-hoon shrugged. "I just pressed some buttons. Anyone could have done it." "But no one else did," she replied. "You were the only one here. You could have hidden. You could have protected yourself. Instead, you helped strangers who had nothing to offer you in return." "It was the right thing to do," Ji-hoon said simply. "I do not need a reward for doing the right thing." The woman studied him for a long moment, as if she was seeing something in him that he could not see himself. Then she nodded and turned away, disappearing into the crowd before Ji-hoon could ask her name. The villagers helped him as much as they could. They shared their food, offered him a place to sleep, and promised to send word to the nearest trading post about his situation. Ji-hoon thanked them and spent the night under a strange orange sky. Thinking about home, and wondering how long it would take to fix his ship. He never learned the woman's name. He never knew that she was not a villager at all, but Queen Yuna herself, traveling in disguise as she sometimes did to see how her people truly lived. He never knew that she had watched him run toward danger instead of away from it, that she had seen him risk everything for people he did not know, that she had found in him something she had been searching for her entire life. All Ji-hoon knew was that he had helped some people and made some friends. That was enough for him. That was all it had ever taken to make him happy. Back in the palace, the princes continued their competition, unaware that the contest had already been decided in a quiet village on a farming moon by a man who did not even know he was competing. 3 weeks had passed since Ji-hoon's emergency landing on the farming moon. The villagers had managed to contact a trading post, and replacement parts for his ship were finally on their way. He spent his days helping with the harvest, enjoying the simple work and the company of people who treated him like family. On the morning of the 22nd day, a royal transport ship appeared in the sky above the village. It was enormous, covered in golden decorations, and guarded by a dozen military vessels. The villagers gathered in the square, whispering among themselves. A royal ship visiting their tiny moon was unheard of. The transport landed in the same field where the quiet dawn sat. A ramp lowered, and a figure in official robes walked out, followed by soldiers in ceremonial armor. The official approached the crowd, his expression serious and formal. "I am looking for the human called Kim Ji-hoon," he announced. Ji-hoon stepped forward, confused and slightly worried. "That is me. Is there a problem?" The official bowed deeply, which surprised Ji-hoon even more. Royal officials did not bow to cargo captains. "You have been summoned to the capital by order of Queen Yuna herself. A ship will take you there immediately. Your vessel will be repaired and delivered to you in the capital." "Summoned? For what?" "You will learn that when you arrive. Please come with us." Ji-hoon had many questions, but the official offered no answers. He said goodbye to the villagers who had become his friends, gathered his few belongings, and boarded the royal transport. As the ship rose into the sky, he wondered what could possibly require his presence in the capital. Perhaps it was about the pirate incident. Perhaps the villagers had reported what he did, and the queen wanted to thank him personally. A medal, maybe, or a small reward. That would be nice. He could use the money for ship repairs. The journey to the capital took only a few hours. The royal transport moved faster than anything Ji-hoon had ever flown. When they arrived, he pressed his face against the window like a child, staring at the palace that dominated the city below. It was the most beautiful building he had ever seen, all graceful curves and shimmering surfaces that seemed to glow with inner light. The transport landed in a private dock, and guards escorted Ji-hoon through endless corridors of marble and crystal. He felt out of place in his worn cargo clothes, surrounded by such magnificence. People stared at him as he passed, their expressions ranging from curiosity to confusion to open contempt. Finally, he was brought to a vast hall filled with beings from across the galaxy. Ji-hoon recognized some species from his travels. Others were completely unknown to him, creatures of crystal and metal and light that defied his understanding. They all turned to look at him as he entered, and the weight of their attention made him want to shrink and disappear. A court official approached him, the same one who had brought him from the farming moon. "Welcome to the Palace of Light, Kim Ji-hoon of Earth. You have been nominated as a suitor for Queen Yuna's hand in marriage." Ji-hoon was certain he had misheard. "I am sorry, could you repeat that?" "You have been nominated as Earth's representative in the royal competition. You will compete alongside the other suitors for the right to marry Queen Yuna." "There must be a mistake." Ji-hoon looked around the hall at the princes and lords who watched him with amusement. "I am a cargo captain. Earth does not have a representative. We barely have 3 ships capable of leaving our solar system. I cannot compete with these people." "Nevertheless," the official said, his voice flat and formal, "the Queen has invoked the ancient right of nomination. This right allows her to add any individual to the competition, regardless of their status or species. You have been chosen. You will compete." Prince Dawen's crystalline form sparkled as he laughed. The sound was like breaking glass, sharp and mocking. "A human? You cannot be serious. Their species discovered space travel barely 2 centuries ago. They are primitives, children playing among their elders." He gestured at Ji-hoon with a hand made of perfect diamond. Look at him. He has no power, no wealth, no army. What could he possibly offer the queen? High Commander Taiho's mechanical eyes scanned Jihoon from head to toe. My sensors detect no weapons, no cybernetic enhancements, no genetic modifications. He is a baseline human, completely ordinary. This is a waste of everyone's time. Lord Hyun said nothing, but Jihoon could feel something pressing against his mind, a gentle touch that seemed to be reading his thoughts. He pushed back instinctively, and Hyun raised an eyebrow in surprise. Interesting, the Mindweaver murmured. He has some natural resistance to mental intrusion. That is unusual for a human. It does not matter what he has or does not have, the official announced. The Queen's word is law. Kim Ji-hoon will compete in the 3 trials alongside all other suitors. Ji-hoon wanted to argue. He wanted to explain that this was all a terrible misunderstanding, that he was not qualified to compete for anything, let alone the hand of the most powerful queen in the galaxy. But the official had already turned away, leaving him standing alone in a sea of hostile faces. A servant appeared at his elbow and guided him to quarters that had been prepared for him. The rooms were luxurious beyond anything Jihoon had ever experienced, with soft beds, strange foods, and windows that looked out over the city. But he could not enjoy any of it. His mind raced with questions that had no answers. Why had the queen chosen him? What had he done to deserve this impossible honor? And how was he supposed to compete against beings who could reshape matter, control minds, and command armies? That evening, a messenger delivered a document explaining the 3 trials he would face. The trial of wisdom would test his mind. The trial of strength would test his body. The trial of heart would test his character. Each trial was designed by ancient Valoran scholars to reveal a suitor's true nature. Jihoon read the document 3 times. The trials sounded impossible for someone like him. He had no special wisdom, no great strength, no particular virtue that set him apart from other men. He was just a cargo captain who had accidentally helped some villagers and somehow found himself in the middle of a galactic competition. He walked to the window and looked out at the night sky. Somewhere up there, beyond the lights of the city, the stars waited. Those stars were his home, his life, his comfort. He had spent 15 years flying among them, learning their patterns, understanding their moods. They had never asked him to be anything other than what he was. Now he was being asked to be something more. The question was whether he could do it. A knock came at his door. When he opened it, he found a young servant holding a small box. "A gift from the queen," the servant said. "She asked me to deliver it personally." Inside the box was a simple pendant on a chain. The pendant was shaped like a small ship, carved from a material that seemed to glow with soft inner light. Attached was a note written in elegant script. "For the man who flies toward danger instead of away from it. Thank you for showing me that courage does not require power. It only requires a willing heart. Good luck in the trials." The note was unsigned, but Jihoon knew who had sent it. His hands trembled slightly as he put the pendant around his neck. Perhaps, he thought, this competition was not about being the most powerful or the most wealthy. Perhaps it was about something else entirely. And perhaps, just perhaps, a simple cargo captain from a primitive planet might have a chance after all. He went to bed that night with the pendant resting against his chest, dreaming of stars and queens, and a future he had never imagined possible. The Archive of Ages was the greatest library in the known universe. It stretched underground for hundreds of miles, filled with the knowledge of 10,000 civilizations collected over millions of years. Books made of paper sat alongside crystal data storage and living documents that changed their contents based on who was reading them. Some knowledge was too dangerous to be accessed freely. Some was so old that the species who created it had been extinct for longer than humanity had existed. The suitors gathered at the entrance to the archive, their forms casting strange shadows in the blue light that filled the chamber. Prince Dawen's crystal body caught and scattered the light into rainbows. Commander Taiho's metal form absorbed it completely. Lord Hyun seemed to glow slightly, as if light was attracted to him. Jihoon stood among them in his simple clothes, feeling very small and very human. The Queen's chief advisor, an ancient Valoran named Elder Mirai, addressed the group. "The trial of wisdom will test your ability to understand what others cannot. You will enter the archive and attempt to solve the paradox of the silent star, a puzzle that has defeated the greatest minds of 100 generations. She gestured toward a massive door carved with symbols Ji-hoon did not recognize. The puzzle exists in many forms. You will each receive a version suited to your species' way of thinking. You have until sunset to provide your answer. Begin. The door opened, and the suitors filed inside. Ji-hoon followed, his heart beating fast. Inside the archive, servants guided each suitor to a private chamber. Ji-hoon's chamber was simple compared to the others, containing only a desk, a chair, and a single document. The document displayed the puzzle he was meant to solve. It was an astronomical chart showing a region of space Ji-hoon did not recognize. Hundreds of stars were marked with symbols and connected by lines. In the center was a star marked differently from the others, circled in red with a question mark beside it. This apparently was the silent star. Accompanying the chart was a set of equations and historical notes. The silent star had been discovered thousands of years ago during a survey of a remote galaxy. It appeared normal in every way except one. It produced no signal of any kind. No light, no radio waves, no gravitational fluctuations. It existed, but it was completely quiet, completely invisible to every form of detection except direct observation. Scholars had spent centuries trying to understand why. They developed theories about exotic matter, dimensional anomalies, and hidden technologies. They sent probes that never returned. They built telescopes powerful enough to see individual atoms on planets 1,000 light years away. Nothing explained the silence. The puzzle asked, why is the silent star silent? Ji-hoon stared at the document for a long time. He was not a scientist. He had never studied astronomy beyond what he needed to navigate his cargo routes. The equations made no sense to him. The theories mentioned concepts he had never heard of. But something about the puzzle felt familiar. He had encountered strange things during his years flying through space. He had seen phenomena that scientists said were impossible. And he had learned that sometimes the most complicated problems had the simplest answers. He thought about the silent star. What would make a star go completely silent? Not damaged or destroyed, just silent, invisible to detection, but still there. An idea began to form in his mind. In the chamber next to his, Prince Dowan was restructuring his neural pathways to process information faster. He analyzed every equation, cross-referenced every theory, and ran simulations that would take human computers years to complete. His crystal mind worked at speeds that made light seem slow. Commander Taiho had connected to the Iron Collective's network, accessing the combined knowledge of billions of artificial minds. They worked together on the problem, each contributing their specialized expertise. It was the most powerful computational effort ever applied to a single question. Lord Hyun simply sat in meditation, reaching out with his mind to touch the archive itself. The library was old enough to have developed a kind of consciousness. He communicated with it directly, asking questions that could not be spoken in words. Hours passed. The other suitors worked furiously, their methods growing more desperate as sunset approached. They were so focused on finding the answer that they never stopped to question the question itself. Ji-hoon put down his pen and looked at what he had written. It was not an equation or a theory. It was a single sentence. Some silences are sacred. He thought about his own life, about the times when he had chosen to be quiet. When his mother died, he did not want people asking questions. When his ship broke down and he was stranded alone in space, he did not send distress signals because he knew no help would come. When he saw beauty so profound, it took his breath away. He did not try to describe it because words would only diminish it. Silence was not always absence. Sometimes it was protection. Sometimes it was respect. Sometimes it was the only appropriate response to something too important for noise. What if the silent star was not broken or strange or dangerous? What if it simply did not want to be found? What if some intelligence, some being, some force beyond understanding had looked at the universe full of noise and conflict and chosen to step away? Not out of fear or weakness, but out of wisdom. The puzzle was not asking for the mechanism of the silence. It was asking for understanding. At sunset, the suitors presented their answers to Elder Mirai and a council of scholars. Prince Dowan offered a detailed theory involving exotic matter and dimensional folding. Commander Tejo presented calculations showing the probability of various physical explanations. Lord Hyun described visions he had received from the archive, suggesting the star was a gateway to another reality. Each answer was impressive. Each demonstrated vast intelligence and capability. The scholars nodded and took notes, clearly satisfied with the quality of the responses. Then it was Ji-hoon's turn. He walked to the front of the chamber and placed his paper on the podium. The scholars looked at it with confusion. Prince Dowan laughed his glass shard laugh. That is it. One sentence? The human could not even manage a proper theory? Ji-hoon ignored him. He looked at Elder Mirai and spoke clearly. The puzzle is not asking why the star makes no sound. It is asking why we expect it to speak. Wisdom means knowing that not everything needs to be explained. Some silences are not problems to be solved. They are choices to be respected. The chamber went quiet. The scholars looked at each other with expressions Ji-hoon could not read. Elder Mirai's ancient face was unreadable. You believe the silent star chose to be silent? She asked. I believe that something capable of hiding from the entire universe is not broken or trapped. It is powerful beyond our understanding. And sometimes the wisest thing a powerful being can do is step back and let the universe make its own noise. More silence. Ji-hoon felt the weight of it pressing down on him. He had either said something profound or something incredibly stupid. He could not tell which. Finally, Elder Mirai spoke. In 10,000 years, only two beings have provided an answer that the original creators of the puzzle would accept. The first was a Velaran philosopher who achieved enlightenment and immediately afterward chose to speak no more. The second is you. The hall erupted in chaos. Princes shouted in disbelief. Scholars argued with each other. Commander Taiho demanded to see the verification protocols. Lord Hyun stared at Ji-hoon with something new in his eyes, something that might have been respect. Ji-hoon stood quietly in the middle of the storm, wearing the pendant the queen had given him, thinking about silence and stars and the wisdom of knowing when not to speak. He had passed the first trial. 2 more remained. And for the first time since arriving at the palace, he began to believe that maybe, just maybe, he was exactly where he was supposed to be. The news of the human's success in the trial of wisdom spread through the palace like wildfire. Servants whispered about it in corridors. Nobles discussed it at dinner. The other suitors, who had dismissed Ji-hoon as a joke, now watched him with careful eyes. One lucky answer did not make him a real competitor, they told themselves. The next trial would reveal his true weakness. The trial of strength was announced 3 days later. Elder Mirai gathered the suitors in a briefing room and explained the challenge. This trial will not be a contest of combat between suitors, she said. Velaran tradition values protection over destruction. You will each be responsible for escorting a transport of refugees through an asteroid field while under attack from automated defense drones. The drones are old war machines, left over from an ancient conflict. They cannot be reasoned with or disabled remotely. Your task is simple. Protect the refugees and deliver them safely to the other side. A holographic map appeared, showing the asteroid field and the path through it. The field was dense and chaotic, full of spinning rocks ranging from pebbles to mountains. Red dots marked the positions of hundreds of drones, each one programmed to destroy anything that entered their territory. You may use any resources at your disposal, Elder Mirai continued. Your own abilities, your ships, your soldiers. The only rule is that no refugees may be harmed. Begin preparations immediately. The trial starts tomorrow at dawn. The suitors dispersed to prepare. Prince Dowan called for engineers to reinforce his crystalline shields. Commander Taiho summoned a squadron of Iron Collective warships. Lord Hyun meditated, preparing his mind to predict the drone's every movement. Ji-hoon walked slowly back to his quarters, his mind working through the problem. He had no shields, no warships, no psychic powers. His only asset was the Quiet Dawn, which had been repaired and delivered to the palace docks. It was a good ship, reliable and familiar, but it was built for cargo, not combat. He spent the night going over the map of the asteroid field. He had flown through dangerous space before. Asteroid fields were unpredictable, but they followed patterns if you knew how to read them. The drones were a bigger problem. They were fast, deadly, and numerous. Any direct confrontation would end badly for him. But maybe, he thought, direct confrontation was not the only option. At dawn, the suitors assembled at the starting point. Each one had a transport ship filled with refugees, civilians who had volunteered to participate in the trial. They knew the danger, but trusted that the powerful beings competing for the Queen's hand would keep them safe. Prince Dowan went first. His crystalline shields were magnificent, walls of living diamond that formed and reformed to deflect the drone's weapons. He carved a path through the asteroid field like a knife through water, his transport following safely in his wake. When he emerged on the other side, every refugee was unharmed. The observers applauded. Commander Taiho went next. His warships moved in perfect formation, destroying drones before they could get close to the transport. The Iron Collective's tactical precision was flawless. Not a single shot reached the refugees. Another perfect success. Lord Hyun's approach was elegant. He did not fight the drones or block their attacks. He simply predicted their movements and guided his transport through gaps in their formations, slipping through the field like water through cracks in stone. It was beautiful to watch, almost like a dance. Then it was Jae-hoon's turn. He climbed into the quiet dawn and activated its systems. The old ship hummed to life, its engines vibrating in a way that felt like greeting from an old friend. He checked his instruments, adjusted his seat, and took a deep breath. "Attention refugees," he announced over the intercom. "My name is Kim Jae-hoon. I am not a prince or a warrior or a psychic. I am a cargo captain. I have been flying through space for 15 years, and I have never lost a passenger or a cargo. I do not intend to start today. Please secure yourselves and trust me. I will get you to the other side." He released the docking clamps and flew toward the asteroid field. The drones detected him immediately. Dozens of red lights appeared on his sensors, converging on his position. Ji-hoon did not try to fight them. Instead, he dove into the asteroid field, using the massive rocks as cover. The quiet dawn was small and agile, designed to navigate through crowded spaceports and tight cargo bays. Ji-hoon used every bit of that agility now, weaving between asteroids at speeds that made the observers gasp. The drones followed, but they were built for open combat, not precision flying. One by one, they crashed into rocks or lost sight of their target in the chaos. When a group of drones got too close, Ji-hoon did something unexpected. He flew directly toward a cluster of asteroids that were about to collide. The timing had to be perfect. Too early and the drones would follow him through. Too late and he would be crushed. He watched the asteroids spin, calculated their trajectories in his head, and punched through the gap at the last possible second. The rocks slammed together behind him, crushing the drones that had been on his tail. The observers watched in stunned silence. The human was not fighting the drones or blocking their attacks. He was using the asteroid field itself as a weapon, turning the environment against his enemies. But the strain was showing. Warning lights appeared on Ji-hoon's console. His engines were overheating from the constant maneuvering. The transport he was protecting was larger and slower than his ship, struggling to keep up with his movements. "I need to slow down," he muttered to himself. "But if I slow down, the drones will catch us." He made a decision. He flew the quiet dawn between the transport and the approaching drones, using his ship as a shield. Energy blasts hit his hull, burning through metal and melting systems. Alarms screamed in the cockpit. Smoke filled the air. Ji-hoon kept flying. He vented atmosphere from non-essential compartments, using the escaping air as propulsion to maintain speed. He rerouted power from weapons he did not have to engines he desperately needed. He flew by instinct, by memory, by sheer determination. When his primary sensors failed, he navigated by sight through the smoke-filled cockpit. When his main engine finally gave out, he used maneuvering thrusters to push the transport the final distance to safety. The quiet dawn emerged from the asteroid field, barely holding together. Its hull was covered in burns and holes. Half its systems were dead. But behind it, the transport ship floated safely, carrying every single refugee unharmed. Ji-hoon opened his cockpit and climbed out onto the emergency walkway. His hands were shaking. His body was covered in sweat and burns from electrical fires he had put out during the flight. He looked at the damaged ship that had been his home for 15 years and felt something between grief and gratitude. The observers were silent. Then slowly they began to applaud. Elder Mirai approached Jehun with an expression he could not read. You nearly destroyed yourself protecting those people. Your ship is ruined. Your body is injured. Yet you succeeded. The refugees are safe, Jehun said simply. That is what matters. The other suitors used power to overcome the challenge. You used something else. What would you call it? Jehun thought about the question. I suppose I would call it stubbornness. I decided those people would not be hurt. Everything else was just details. Among the military observers, generals and admirals exchanged glances. They had seen warriors fight impossible battles. They had seen heroes sacrifice themselves for glory. But they had never seen anything quite like this. A man with nothing but skill and will, using every tool at his disposal, refusing to give up until the job was done. It was not the strength they had expected, but perhaps some of them thought it was a more dangerous kind of strength, the kind that did not know when to quit. Jehun sat down on the walkway, exhausted beyond words, and looked up at the stars. 2 trials done, 1 more to go. And somewhere in the palace, watching through a window, Queen Yuna smiled. The palace was quieter than usual. The suitors waited in their chambers, each one called at random to face the final trial. No one knew what the trial of heart would involve. The rules stated only that each suitor would meet privately with the queen, and she alone would judge the results. Prince Dewan emerged from his meeting looking confused. Commander Taiho returned with his metal face showing something that might have been frustration. Lord Hyun came back silent, his eyes troubled, refusing to answer questions about what had happened. When Jehun's turn came, a servant led him through corridors he had not seen before, away from the grand halls and public spaces, into a part of the palace that felt almost ordinary. The decorations were simpler here. The lights were softer. It felt like someone's home rather than a monument to power. The servant stopped at an unmarked door. The queen will see you now, she said, and walked away. Jehun stood alone for a moment, gathering his courage. Then he opened the door and stepped inside. The room was small and comfortable, nothing like the throne room where he had first seen Queen Yuna surrounded by her court. There was a fireplace with real flames, a few chairs arranged around a low table, and windows looking out at a garden filled with flowers that glowed softly in the darkness. Queen Yuna sat in one of the chairs. She wore simple clothes, no crown, no jewelry except for a small ring on her finger. Without her royal garments, she looked younger, more vulnerable. Her silver skin still glowed gently, and her purple eyes still held the light of dying stars. But something about her seemed tired in a way that went deeper than physical exhaustion. Please sit, she said, gesturing to the chair across from her. Jehun sat. He did not know what to say, so he waited. The other suitors were very confident when they came in, Yuna said. They told me about their kingdoms, their armies, their technologies. They explained how they would expand the Valoran Empire, defeat our enemies, bring prosperity to our people. They had plans and strategies and visions of the future. I do not have those things, Jehun admitted. I am not a prince or a general. I cannot offer you fleets or territories or political alliances. I know. Yuna smiled, but there was sadness in it. That is why I wanted to talk to you last. I needed to remember what it was like to speak with someone who was not trying to sell me something. Silence fell between them, but it was not uncomfortable. The fire crackled. Outside, the glowing flowers swayed in a gentle breeze. May I ask you a question? Jehun said finally. Of course. Why did you nominate me? I am nobody. I was just passing through your system when my ship broke down. I helped some villagers because they needed help. That is nothing special. Anyone would have done the same. Yuna shook her head. No, anyone would not have done the same. I have watched my suitors carefully. Prince Dowan would have seen the villagers as beneath his notice. Commander Taiho would have calculated that helping them offered no strategic advantage. Lord Hyun would have sensed their fear and walked away rather than involve himself in their problems. Each of them is powerful, intelligent, capable. None of them would have helped strangers who had nothing to offer in return. You were there, Jehun said slowly, remembering the woman in simple clothes who had thanked him. In the village. That was you. I travel in disguise sometimes. It is the only way I can see my people as they truly are, not as they present themselves to their queen. I happened to be visiting that moon when the pirates attacked. I saw you run toward your ship, and I thought you were going to escape. Then I saw what you did. You stayed. You helped. You asked for nothing." Her voice grew soft. "Do you know how rare that is? In my world, every person I meet wants something from me. Every alliance, every friendship, every moment of kindness comes with strings attached. I have never met anyone who simply did the right thing because it was right. Until you." Jihoon did not know how to respond. He had never thought of himself as special. He had just done what felt natural, what he would want someone to do for him if their positions were reversed. "Tell me," Yuna said, leaning forward slightly, "why should I choose you as my husband?" The question hung in the air. Jihoon thought about it carefully before answering. "You should not," he said, "at least not for the reasons a queen should choose. I cannot make your empire stronger. I cannot protect you from your enemies. I cannot give you wealth or power or ancient secrets. If you marry me, the galaxy will laugh at you. Your enemies will think you are weak. Your allies will wonder if you have lost your mind. Then why are you here? Because you asked me to be, and because—" He paused, searching for the right words. "When I helped those villagers, I did not know one of them was you. I did not expect any reward. I just saw people who needed help, and I could not walk away. That is who I am. That is all I have to offer." Yuna's eyes glistened. Was it tears? Jihoon could not tell. Her species was so different from his own. "The other suitors look at me and see the queen," she said quietly. "They see the crown, the kingdom, the power. They calculate what I am worth to them. They weigh my beauty against my territory, my technology against my political connections. To them, I am an asset to be acquired, a prize to be won. And when you look at me, what do you see?" Jihoon asked. "I see someone who is tired," he said softly. "Someone who has carried a heavy weight for a long time. Someone who is surrounded by people who want things from her, but is somehow still alone." He met her eyes directly. "I know that feeling. Space is vast and empty, and sometimes the loneliest place you can be is in a room full of people who only see what they can get from you." A tear did fall then, silver and glowing, tracing a path down Yuna's cheek. She wiped it away quickly, but not before Jihoon saw it. "Everyone in the galaxy wants to marry the queen," she whispered, "but no one has ever asked what Yuna wants." "What do you want?" The question was simple, but it seemed to strike her like a physical blow. Her composure cracked, just for a moment, and Jihoon saw the loneliness behind it. 300 years of ruling, of making decisions that affected billions of lives, of being perfect and powerful and alone. "I want someone who sees me," she said finally. "Not the crown, not the kingdom, just me. I want someone who would have helped those villagers even if I was not watching. I want someone who does the right thing because it is right, not because they expect a reward. I want someone who, when I am old and tired and my kingdom has crumbled to dust, will still be there because they love me, not what I represent." Jihoon reached across the table and took her hand. It was warm despite its silver color, soft despite its alien texture. "I cannot promise you power or protection," he said, "but I can promise you this. I will always see you, not the queen, you, and whatever happens, whether we are surrounded by enemies or sitting alone in an empty ship drifting through space, I will be there. Not because of what you can give me, but because of who you are." Yuna looked at their joined hands for a long moment. Then she looked up at him, and for the first time since they met, he saw her smile without sadness. "The trial is over," she said. "Did I pass?" She squeezed his hand gently. "You were the only one who ever could." The Great Hall had never been so full. Representatives from every major civilization in the galaxy had gathered to witness Queen Yuna's choice. Diplomatic ships clogged the space around the Valoran homeworld. News broadcasters transmitted the event to trillions of viewers across countless planets. This was the most important moment in galactic politics in 1,000 years, and everyone wanted to see it. The suitors stood in a line before the throne, dressed in their finest. Prince Dowan's crystal form had been polished until it shone like starlight. Commander Tai Ho's metal body gleamed with fresh plating. Lord Hyun wore robes of flowing silk that seemed to shift between dimensions. Behind them stood representatives of their civilizations, thousands of soldiers, nobles, and advisors ready to celebrate their prince's victory. At the end of the line stood Kim Ji-hoon. He wore clean clothes borrowed from the palace servants, simple and plain compared to the magnificence around him. He had no representatives behind him. Earth had not even known the competition was happening until it was nearly over. He was alone, as he had always been, a cargo captain standing among kings. Trumpets sounded. The crowd fell silent, and Queen Yuna entered the hall. She wore her full royal regalia, a gown of woven starlight that flowed around her like liquid silver. Her crown was made from a material older than most planets, shaped by forces that no living being understood. She looked beautiful, powerful, and utterly untouchable. But Ji-hoon, watching from his place in line, remembered how she had looked in that small room with the fireplace. He remembered the tear on her cheek and the loneliness in her voice. He remembered who she really was beneath the crown. Yuna walked to her throne and turned to face the assembled multitudes. Her voice, amplified by ancient technology, reached every corner of the vast hall. I thank you all for coming to witness this moment. The traditions of my people require that I choose a husband from among those who have competed in the 3 trials. I have watched each suitor carefully. I have seen their wisdom, their strength, and their hearts. Now I will make my choice. She began walking down the line of suitors, speaking of each one. Prince Dowan of the crystalline hierarchy demonstrated great intelligence in the trial of wisdom and remarkable defensive abilities in the trial of strength. His people are ancient and powerful. An alliance with them would bring many benefits to my empire. Dowan's diamond face twisted into something like a smile. He clearly believed the queen was about to choose him. High Commander Tai Ho of the Iron Collective showed unmatched tactical skill and unwavering determination. His military strength would make my empire virtually invincible. No enemy would dare challenge us with his fleets at our command. Tai Ho's mechanical eyes glowed brighter. His soldiers straightened with pride. Lord Hyun of the Mindweaver Consortium displayed wisdom beyond his years and abilities that border on the supernatural. With his people's knowledge, we could unlock secrets that have been hidden since the beginning of time. Hyun bowed gracefully, accepting the praise as his due. Then Yuna stopped. She had reached the end of the line, where Ji-hoon stood alone. And then there is Kim Ji-hoon of Earth. The hall buzzed with whispers. Many of the observers had heard about the human who had somehow passed the first 2 trials, but they still did not take him seriously. How could they? He was nothing compared to the others. He had no power, no army, no ancient civilization behind him. He was a joke, an amusing story they would tell at parties for years to come. Yuna waited for the whispers to die down before continuing. Kim Ji-hoon is not a prince. He cannot offer me fleets or technology or political alliances. His species is young and weak by galactic standards. They have barely begun to explore the stars. By every measure that my advisors consider important, he is the least qualified suitor in this hall. Prince Dowan laughed openly. Then why waste our time speaking of him? Make your choice, Your Majesty. We all know it will not be the primitive. Yuna turned to look at him, and something in her eyes made his laughter die in his throat. I have not finished speaking, she said quietly, but her voice carried like thunder. She turned back to face the crowd. Kim Ji-hoon solved the paradox of the silent star, not through power or technology, but through understanding. He protected the refugees not with shields or weapons, but with skill, courage, and a refusal to give up that put all of you to shame. And in the trial of heart, her voice softened. In the trial of heart, he saw me. Not my crown, not my kingdom, not what I could offer him, just me. A woman who has been alone in a room full of people her entire life. She extended her hand toward Ji-hoon. I choose Kim Ji-hoon of Earth. The silence was absolute. It was the silence of a universe holding its breath, unable to believe what it had just heard. Then Prince Dowan shattered it. This is outrageous. His crystal form flickered with barely contained fury, edges sharpening into blade-like points. You cannot be serious. You would choose this primitive over the combined might of the crystalline hierarchy? This is an insult to every civilization present. Commander Tai Ho's weapon systems hummed to life. My collective will not accept this decision. We offered you protection, and you spit in our face. Lord Hyun's eyes glowed with psychic energy. I have seen many possible futures, but this I did not foresee. You are making a terrible mistake, Your Majesty. The hall erupted into chaos. Ambassadors shouted. Soldiers reached for weapons. It seemed that at any moment, violence would break out. But Queen Yuna did not flinch. She walked through the chaos, past the angry princes and the threatening soldiers, until she stood before Jihoon. She took his hand and turned to face the crowd. You ask why I chose him? Her voice cut through the noise like a blade. Because he saved my people when he had nothing to gain. Because he solved an ancient puzzle through wisdom, not force. Because he protected the helpless not with weapons, but with courage and creativity. Because he looked at me and saw a person, not a prize. She squeezed Jihoon's hand, and he squeezed back. The galaxy may fall silent, she continued, but that is only because you have never understood what true strength looks like. It does not roar. It does not demand. It does not calculate advantage or count costs. It shows up when needed, does what is right, and asks for nothing in return. She lifted her chin, every inch the ruler she had been born to be. That is humanity, and that is why I choose him. The hall remained frozen. The princes seethed. The ambassadors calculated. The future of the galaxy hung in the balance. Then from somewhere in the back of the hall, someone began to clap. The sound was slow at first, hesitant. Then others joined in. Then more. Within moments, the hall was filled with applause that drowned out the protests of the rejected suitors. They were not applauding the political implications or the strategic advantages. They were applauding something simpler and more powerful. They were applauding a love story, a real one, in a galaxy that had forgotten such things were possible. Jihoon looked at Yuna, still struggling to believe this was real. What happens now? He asked quietly. She smiled, and it was the same smile she had given him in the small room with the fireplace. Now we face the future together. It will not be easy. There will be those who hate us, who fear what our union represents. But we will face them as we face everything, together. I am not afraid, Jihoon said, and to his surprise, he meant it. He was a cargo captain from a primitive planet at the edge of the galaxy. He had no army, no wealth, no special powers, but he had something the ancient empires had forgotten, a heart that acted not for reward, but simply because it was right. And somehow, against all odds, that had been enough. Together, hand in hand, the Queen and her cargo captain walked out of the Great Hall to meet their future. Behind them, the galaxy watched in silence, beginning to understand that something had changed. The smallest, youngest species among them had just reminded the universe of a truth it had forgotten. Power was not the only thing that mattered. Wealth was not the only measure of worth. Sometimes the most important strength was the simplest one, the courage to do right by others, even when no one was watching. And Earth, with its 3 interstellar ships and its primitive technology, had just become the most important planet in the known universe. Not because of what it could destroy, but because of what it represented. The story of Kim Jihoon and Queen Yuna was only beginning, but already across the stars, beings of all species were telling it to their children. It was a story about love and courage and the power of a simple heart. It was a story about humanity, and it was only the first chapter.